This is Growth Guide, a podcast exploring the depths of curiosity, questioning everything in the name of growth. I'm your host, Brian D'Alessandro.
Monte Farber is a one-of-a-kind character. He's an acclaimed astrologer, psychic, and author of over 40 books published around the world in 14 languages. Monty was the resident psychic for Jim Cramer's popular financial website, TheStreet.com, where he made bi-monthly economic and stock predictions with uncanny accuracy. It's fitting that I met Monty serendipitously some years ago when I walked into his and his wife, Amy Zerner's East Hampton shop, the Enchanted World Emporium. My wife Navah and I were studying astrology at the time, so it was a fortunate encounter where we ended up having our charts read by Monty for the rest of the day and our minds were completely blown. An essential characteristic of Monty's creative approach to living is his childlike sense of wonder, his playful fun, and sense of adventure. He's uniquely qualified to teach the creative approach not only to those interested in the creative arts, but to all who want to access and use their innate creativity and intuition to enjoy their life more and to do their job better. To Monty, spirituality and creativity are essentially the same thing. Understanding either of them requires the knowledge that unseen forces and ideas both within us and without us, to a large extent, create our experience of reality.
The prolific Monte Farber, thanks so much for joining me today.
It's my pleasure. Brian, it's so good to see you. Remember when you came into the store, the two of you? Where is the other one?
Yeah, Navah is back in the main house with our 4-year-old son. So yeah, we've had a lot happen since then.
Wow, we've done a lot of books, but no children.
I say prolific because you and your wife, Amy Zerner, have published how many books now?
It's over 50. Here's a little picture of some of them. That doesn't even have karma cards in it, actually.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mentioned to you before we started recording the karma cards, which I always have by my office desk because I use them as a great way of just checking in and asking some bigger questions that I don't really have the answers to.
Karma cards have been very good to me, and they came out in 1988. They're still going. It's still in the top 20 astrology books on Amazon, and it's sold, over 1 million copies, and it's in 18 languages. It just came out in Chinese, actually.
That is so cool. And so for anyone listening, we'll just give you a little info on this, because I was thinking if you're up for it, it would be really fun to pull cards for the episode, see what they have to say.
Sure. People use them in all different weird ways. Yeah, they're meant to be planet signs and houses, but some people just mix them all together and just pull a card.
Yeah, I have them separated into the 3. So just for everyone listening, this is a deck kind of like a tarot deck would be, but it's broken astrologically into 3 separate decks. There's the planet, signs, and houses.
Correct. And it makes sentences. When we licensed it to Lifetime TV, they listed it as the slot machine of fate.
I love it.
So they roll around, and then they make 6 sentences that give you advice, either what you should do about something or what will be the outcome of something that you're planning on doing or have done already. Most of my clients come to me before, but I have some clients that come to me afterwards and say, is it going to work? And I'm like, I wish you would come to me before. That's how it is to be a spiritual counselor.
Well, I used Navah and I used these cards when we were pregnant with our son Koro, and he was carrying breech, which means he was upside down. And did I share this with you?
No.
Okay. And so he was carrying breech, and we had planned for a home birth. We were in the final month and getting ready for birthing. And all of a sudden this kind of threw a wrench in plans, as, happens in life. So we were trying to figure out all of these options of how we could help him turn. And Navah was on top of her head. We were doing moxibustion, acupuncture, and yoga poses, ice packs, all different things that were, supposed to help the baby turn around. And at one point we were like, shit, we never actually asked the baby what they wanted. We didn't know if it was a boy or a girl at that time. So we said, all right, let's go to the karma cards. And we pulled cards, and I'll tell you what it was. It was North Node in Aries in the first house.
Well, it's funny. Aries rules the head, and Wow. And the first house is you, so, or the person who's asking. So it's good fortune resulting from the honesty and strength of, I can't remember, of your actions, I would imagine.
We took the interpretation as we read it as it's my karmic duty to come into the world this way and to do it now.
Wow. Yeah, Aries is quick.
Right. And it was like and definitive and decisive. And when we accepted that, like we received that and we said, okay, you know what? We're not going to try to turn you. Like we're going to be hands off. So within 24 hours, he was born. He was born,
Really?
yeah, vaginally
That's
breached.
North Node. Wow.
And yeah, and so it was really wild, but it gave us a lot of comfort. So thank
Oh,
you for
that's
that.
wonderful. God, that makes me so happy. Yeah, because what's more powerful than that? Have you had his chart done?
Well, we have his chart, but we decided initially not to look at it,
Okay.
early on. I
That
think
makes
now
sense.
it's probably time to revisit. He's old enough now that, we've gotten to know him. We just didn't want it to
No,
shape and
listen,
looking
I've
at
never
things.
had children, so I don't know, but I was just on today with at Cordo, one of my publishers had us on with another astrologer who just had a baby, and she hasn't even looked at it. And she's, she has like 300,000 followers. So she's a serious astrologer, but so you're in good company with not looking.
Yeah, I guess, there's few things that are a mystery these days, and I like keeping some of them. But for today, what do you say we draw a
Sure,
card?
you do the drawing because I'm obviously, I would be disqualified on a game show because it's my game.
All right. So what do we want to ask? Let's collectively decide on something.
Well, what'll be the outcome of our podcast?
Beautiful. All right.
You can do stuff like that, people.
Yep. Our planet is
Mercury. So that's talking, which is what we're doing. Mercury
exactly what we're doing.
There's the word communicate, analyze, let your mind tell you. Wow. Oh, wow. Virgo. Well, actually,
it's a full moon in Virgo, right?
it was a full moon in Virgo. The moon has actually moved into Libra by now, but it was a full moon in Virgo because the sun is at the last degrees of Pisces. And the total communication. Analyze the details of the idea in question, communicate the serving of others by making the right connections, let your mind tell you how to do what you must do, and get your ideas going. So we should get our ideas going.
Yeah.
This is great. Well, you can't have a more podcasty answer than that. Karma cards rock. What can I say?
I mean, what I find is it always seems to be it always seems to make sense and apply to what we're drawing for. So Mercury in Virgo in the third house, very cool.
It's like analyze the details of the idea in question. So
that's what this is all about, exploring big ideas and new ideas. And I think astrology falls into that on both sides of the spectrum. One, it's this age-old wisdom of accessing information and knowledge in our place and relationship to the cosmos. And also it's challenging for some people who might have preconceptions around what astrology is. And I'd love to play with demystifying some of that as well.
Well, sure. I mean, when a child is born, and you've seen this, I haven't, but when a child is born, they take their first breath. And that's when a chart really should be done for, is when they take their first breath, because it's as if they ingest the hologram of the subtle energies in there, not just in your room and the lights and the neighborhood, but the planetary energies are very strong. Everybody knows it. I mean, the planet Neptune was discovered because the planet Uranus wasn't doing what it was expected to by scientists. It wasn't doing what it was supposed to do in its orbit. And they said there must be another giant planet out there affecting it. So if the planets are that strong that their energy waves can go across millions of miles, not just the sun, there's this energy matrix that we all, this soup that we all live in. And, I understand why people don't believe in it, because I didn't used to believe in it. When I'm 1974, when I met my wife, Amy Zerner, she was studying astrology and I was studying Amy. So I learned astrology because I used to think it was crap, but I liked her. So, all right, I'll figure something out. I had thought of myself as a scientist. I'd gone to Brooklyn Technical High School. So, and I still think of myself as a scientist. I wrote a book called Quantum Affirmations, which is viewing consciousness as the smallest particle and then seeing if how quantum physics would apply to consciousness. So that was a lot of fun. It's fun. Astrology is fun. That's why I did karma cards. It's fun. And people are like, oh, you're a tree hugger and you're into crystals. I'm like, guess what, my friend? Marcel Vogel, who invented the black light, the LED, the TV you're watching, the screen you're watching, the floppy disk, the hard disk. He worked for IBM for years. When he retired, guess what he got into? Crystals, because there were crystals in everything. And then the thing with tree hugging is, the Native Americans, when they would do there you go, exactly. When the Native Americans were proving their manhood, they'd take a mouthful of water and have to run a long distance and not drink it. And when they got tired, guess what they did? They'd hug a tree. And they didn't do it because they're stupid. They did it because it works and it gives you energy. So all people who put that kind of stuff down, now I'm like, great. You don't like it, fine. But you're missing out on this amazing part of your brain. They're like, oh, we only use 10% of our brain. Well, guess what? It's because you don't think the other 90% exists. That's my attitude. And a lot of that part of your brain is your intuition and all the magic, quote, magic stuff that's actually scientific.
Yeah, hey, I'm with you there. And I think we've largely become disconnected with the intuitive forces and our abilities beyond the mental and physical. And I like to believe that the pendulum is starting to swing back to a place of balance, because it's not that the mind is bad by any stretch. It's just when it rules the roost and it's out of balance with these other qualities that we embody. I attribute them to the sacred feminine. That's where things really get ugly. And I think we're seeing that in our larger systems at play.
Well, you're putting your finger right on the problem. The intuition was always called women's intuition. So since we're coming out of the dark ages with the way women were treated, intuition was viewed as this spooky thing that women had and they weren't understood. Well, guess what? Everybody has intuition. You have a logical mind and you have an intuitive mind. In astrology, it's Mercury, which is the karma card you pulled, is the logical mind. It's ordering everything, naming everything. And the intuition, which is a couple of planets, actually, the moon or Neptune, is using your intuition. And some of the most successful people, and I mean by money value, are intuitive. They'll say, I go by my gut, I fly by the seat of my pants. They got a word for it. But what it comes down to is you guess, because you can't get all the information you want. So you got to guess. And the successful guessers make the money. So the ones who are good with their intuition, that's what all my games are for, is to develop your intuition. Because it works. It doesn't, it's not fortune telling, but it can help you make your fortune, I guess.
Very well put. I'll say for myself, the karma cards have served in doing that, in giving me more confidence in what I'm feeling, but also in my ability to access and tap into something larger than myself to get guidance and support in times that are challenging.
Well, you guys are doing amazing. I went to your website, Hello Humans. It was just amazing and beautiful, and you're helping all these people, and the look is great. And I would have to say that one of the reasons is that the website and all the design stuff you come up with is very intuitive. And you're talking about the sacred family. It's beautiful. It speaks to people's hearts. And if you want to assign that to a sex, I can see why people have all these problems with sexual, naming things with a sexual voice. This is one of the problems with astrology, is it's coming out of the dark ages, and all the old books used to be very sexist. Terribly. So that's why Amy and I have always been trying to undo that kind of sexism with tarot, astrology, oracles, all that kind of stuff. But you guys have done really well since you came. We met we had a store in East Hampton near Rowdy Hall.
That's right.
You're two of my favorite people that ever came in.
Oh, you remember, I was actually studying astrology at the time. And I was wearing a shirt that had all these astrological signs on it. And we just happened to be walking down the street and happened upon your store. And it was just one of these wild, kind of kismet encounters that just everything seemed to align.
Well, yeah. And all my books are always about learning astrology. So I think it's not a coincidence that you were learning it. because people get into astrology and they get into all these imaginary planets and all this other stuff. And I'm always about keep it simple, Zen mind, beginner's mind, because there's enough. There's enough in the beginning. I just had a book come out called Mindful Astrology. And I think the thing I'm the most proud of all my books is that they're available in places like TJ Maxx. We did something called Creativity Oracle. That's in Joanne's Fabrics. We're mainstreaming astrology. And I think we've inspired people to do their own Oracle decks and tarot decks. I guess because people say if those two wahoos can do it, then I guess anybody can. But we're now over 3 million copies of our books in 18 languages. We're original gangsters of Oracle and tarot and astrology, and that's what I mean. It's not about fortune telling, but it can help you make your fortune, and it's all about helping people. I'm not saying that you needed it to do your amazing business, but
oh no, look, I will always look for help to take things to the next level.
Yeah, I read other people's stuff, but I tell you, there's nothing like going into TJ Maxx and seeing your book there, and to know that they think it's gotten that mainstream that the buyers, I mean, we've been at Spencer Gifts for a million years, but that's Spencer, because we don't see the word commercial as a negative thing. We never did. Never. Same with Amy's art. She started off with Tony Walton, who just passed away, the Oscar-winning set designer. He gave her a chance to do the bedspread that Cheetah Rivera danced on in the original Broadway production of Chicago, and Liza Minnelli and Gwen Verdon and those people. And Amy just ran with it. She just, and she's been at Bergdorf's for 20 years as a fashion designer. We don't see commercial as a dirty word.
Well, I think especially for both the arts and astrology, it's so important because they've both been kind of marginalized in such a way, historically, that yes, doing the work of bringing it back to the masses, it just feels spot on. So thank you for that.
Well, it's our pleasure. I mean, Amy and I, we have our brand is called the Enchanted World. I have to talk to you about our brand, actually, because I was so impressed by all the stuff that you did.
Oh, I'd love to. I love what you guys do. And anyone who's not watching, he's sitting in front of this beautiful backdrop, which I imagine is Amy's work. It looks very much like her style.
It is. This is actually called Poseidia. It's one of the islands of Atlantis. It's an original Amy Zerner. But it's a really good feeling to feel like you made an impact. And I think in the future that's coming up, for people to not know astrology or not know how to see, tarot cards is like the first search engine. You ask a question, you pull a card, and there's this picture, and you're supposed to pull from that picture. It's like Google. You never get the right answer, but you got to figure out what the hell is this, so you can ask the next question and do the next search. That's the tarot. And what it does is it brings out your intuition, makes you free associate, and all that kind of stuff is going to help you no matter what you do. No matter no matter what you do, you can do it creatively. And we look at everybody as creative people. It's not like, oh, we're the ivory tower intellectual astrologers. No, it's got to be available to everybody, or else I don't want it. It's got to be fun, and it's got to be universally applicable, in my opinion.
And I also appreciate your notion of this being a muscle that needs to be exercised in order to grow, and then you grow confident in it. It reminds me back in university when I was doing a lot of photography. I had been designing and building my own large format cameras. And so wow. I was playing a lot with light exposure and reciprocity of the film. And so I developed this intuition of how light was exposing on the film paper I was using without any measurements other than me feeling how strong the sun was that was, projecting with the aperture size that it was coming through at, and, what paper I had in there. And I became so in tune with that over time that my readings were more accurate than if I was using a light meter, because that wasn't, taking into account other variables. And it was so amazing. At first I was like, oh, all right, I think I'm just full of shit. But then consistently, as it kept on getting me exactly what I wanted in the exposures, I started to really give it attention. And that I kind of relate to how I feel with astrology. When I'm feeling in connection with these different entities and elements, I'm able to decipher it and read it a lot more clear.
Yeah, because what you're doing is the same thing that Nostradamus did by staring into a flame. You diffuse your consciousness and you allow your intuition to talk to you. Yeah, sometimes I wonder if that's what astrology is. It's just something that I like, that you jump off from. But in a way, it isn't. But it certainly isn't. And the way what you were describing as in photography, when I was a young homeless person, I happened to live in a loft building on 10 East 23rd Street. And one of the people that was there was Sid Kaplan, who developed film. And he did the cover for the Rolling Stones, the black and white one, the black and white cover. Mm-hmm. And the way you're describing is the way he did it. So you had attained mastery by not knowing and having confidence and faith in your intuition to tell you how to do that. So you were making large format cameras? That's cool.
Yeah, it was fun stuff and something I definitely hope to get back to.
One time I've been in bands since I'm 14. So I was in the truck, and the truck had a couple of holes pierced into the side of it in this big box truck.
Yeah.
And as we were driving, I was like, we were somehow
camera obscura.
Exactly. Me and my idiot drummer got locked into the back. And we're looking at what we're going by, but upside
down, right?
It was just amazing, and it was just, I guess, the puncture of the hole in the side of the truck was just right, and it was working as a lens. It's
that simple. It really is that simple.
And it was moving. That was the craziest thing. It was like watching a movie upside down, moving, and we were like screaming. We were probably really stoned because we're talking about the 60s now, yeah. So we didn't know what was going on.
That's hilarious. Well, so all right, you brought up that you think astrology is something that can be really beneficial for people, especially in the times that are coming.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, like right now, I'm not exactly sure when this is going to be put on, but in April, like the 12th, the planets Jupiter and the planets Neptune, I can see everyone's eyes glazing over, but the planet Jupiter takes 12 years to go around the solar system. That's science. Neptune takes 164 years to go around the solar system. That's science. Now, moving into the astrology element, Neptune and Jupiter are the rulers of Pisces. Jupiter was the ruler until Pisces was rediscovered. I say rediscovered because the Sumerians knew about Neptune 5,000 years ago. They knew about Pluto. They called it Gaga. I had a friend who could read cuneiforms. So when Jupiter and Neptune come together in the home sign, after 160 something years, the last time that happened, they discovered how to dye clothing so that everybody could have clothing that had color, and you didn't have to be brown or black as your choices, And so there's probably going to be some amazing discoveries. It rules gases, it rules oil. Big surprise there. Maybe there'll be a synthetic gasoline discovered because it's getting so expensive. It might actually be to someone's benefit to discover. I could swear they did it during World War II. I could swear the Germans had synthetic gasoline, but maybe that's just a dream that I had. So Jupiter, Neptune falls there's something called transits in astrology. It means that right now the planets in the sky are doing their thing, and relating that to your chart, the chart from when you took your first breath or when you were born, is called transits. So that Jupiter-Neptune conjunction on April 12th falls somewhere in every person's chart. And that could be the guy outside who's working on something in your house, or it could be the leader of the free world, whoever the hell that is. It'll mean that everyone is going to be inspired. It's very goosebumps. Neptune, Jupiter is very goosebumps, but it can also be deceit. Neptune and Jupiter are all about the other world, utopia. So it rules like Mother Teresa going out to be the compassionate helper of the poor addict in the gutter, and it rules the addict in the gutter who couldn't handle it and escaped into addiction because they wanted that other world so much they couldn't take this one. And that's the kind of thought process and mind expansion that comes when you think about astrology. I'm not saying you're going to know, but just thinking about it is worth it, I think, anyway.
And as a way of seeing these larger trends and patterns that play out throughout history,
Yeah.
I find it to be very informative and grounding to have an idea of these larger cycles that are at play.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too America centric because you might have people outside the United States with your podcast. The United States is going through a what's called a Pluto return. Pluto takes around 240 something years to go around the solar system, depending on the cycle. When you have a Pluto return, no empire goes through a Pluto return without fundamental transformation. It's never happened. A lot of them just end, like the Syrian Empire. But Rome, went from being Rome to being the Republic, then from the Republic it went to being the Caesars after the second one. It was Julius Caesar got killed, and then his nephew Augustus took over, and then you had the Caesars. And then 240 years after that, the shit hit the fan, and you had forgive me for saying that, and then you had the Praetorian Guard turned on the Caesars. Every Pluto return is rough. So the United States is going through its Pluto return, so it's fundamentally transforming. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's fundamentally transforming. Yeah, I like to think that it's going to be the Constitution is going to be applied to everybody, and that there's going to be justice instead of just us. That's how I like to think of it. I hope so.
Is there anything else astrologically that points to that?
That's a really powerful one. Well, also Neptune is opposing where it was on when America was created in July 4th, 1776. And the last time Neptune opposed its sign, like I said, it takes 160 years, so that's like every 80 something years. It was John Brown, who was so against slavery. They have that song, John Brown's body lies a moldering in the grave. John Brown was a white guy who was so against slavery that he took on the United States government at Harper's Ferry, raided their armory, unfortunately killed people, and tried to lead a rebellion of slaves against slavery. That's how much he was. I mean, I think there should be statues to this guy, but they hung him because they viewed it as treason. But it's that kind of passion. So I think that there are passionate patriots right now in this country, and it's not a surprise to an astrologer. Let's put it that way. I know, right? It's crazy.
Well, no, I mean, it's big. It's big. And I think, look, no one that I've spoken to is contesting that we're in the midst of these big times, these big recalibrations and transformations. We're hopefully coming out of this pandemic funk that we've all been in, right? But this has been a huge transformative time in so many ways. You want to touch on that a little bit and maybe touch on what the short term, the year holds in store for us?
Oh, sure. Well, the pandemic, we all knew something was coming when Pluto and Saturn were going to conjoin around December 12th in 2019. And that has only happened 5 times in the last 2,000 years where Pluto and Saturn would get together in the sign of Capricorn. So we all knew something was going to change in terms of the paradigm shift, because the first time was obviously Jesus. The second time was when Empress Theodora and Emperor Justinian codified the Bible. This is the Bible, this ain't. You're a heretic, you're not a heretic, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Then it was Kublai Khan, the first non-Chinese emperor of China, who said, well, you've all been Confucianism people, but guess what? Tomorrow you're a Buddhist, and if you're not, I'll kill you. It's that kind of change. Cortez and doing horrible things in South America. It's always Charlemagne, make the Roman Empire great again. And also that was Emperor Justinian and Theodora that they wanted to unite the Roman Empire again. So it's that kind of major stuff was going on. We're just now coming out of that Pluto Saturn thing because Pluto's so slow. I think they're going to try and do lockdowns again, but the pushback this time is not just going to be the isolated trucker. It's going to be everybody, because even you can see it even in what's going on in Ukraine. It's not the same old world. Russia just can't go in like they did in the 50s and just like roll into Hungary and roll into all these places. These people are fighting back. And the united world, where the communications, you pull the karma cards of Mercury, Virgo in the 3rd house. Communications are such that it's not the same world. And I think that the individual is what's going to make the world better. I think empowered individuals. And that's what we're trying to do with teaching people how to astrology and oracles and get in touch with your inner power. That I know that's crazy to assume a little card game and then talk about war, but empowered people are the ones who are going to change this world. The ones that are afraid of life and afraid of living are not going to change the world. And I want it to be better for your son.
As do I. And I also have experienced this coalescing of sides that has been coming about, which is really interesting to just witness and to be a part of, but also that aspect that you speak of individuals standing up, right? The whole idea that we are the savior we've been waiting for. I think there's a large theme that I feel, and tell me if you agree, of stepping out of this victimhood or this enslavement and into our own power, to recognizing it and holding it and standing up for it.
Well, we have to. It's it's either we hang together or we hang individually. I think it was one of the patriots when the United States was founded that said that. I think that's the only thing that can work, because unfortunately, just like cream rises to the top, a lot of times people in politics rise to the top by being ruthless, lying assholes. And I think we cannot let those people decide what's going to happen to you, me, and your child. We have to stand up. Say what you want about the various movements for freedom and patriotism now is a dirty word, but we all have to stand up for. There used to be an expression, I may not agree with what you say, but I'll fight to the death for your right to say it. I think free speech and allowing people to stand up for themselves is a great thing. I certainly don't blame anybody for not wanting to wait till tomorrow for change. I understand. If I was them, I probably feel the same way. But at the same time, you cannot pull the individual next to you down, because you're going to need that individual. I mean, and plus you got to realize there's crazy people and there's bad people. I'm sorry. I grew up with a police sergeant father, and I knew from an early days that there's bad people. And you can't trust everybody, and you have to learn to stand up for yourself, and you can't let people push you around. I mean, you're going to train your child the way you train them. But I was trained that there are bad people and not to be too trusting. So it's a balance between trust and love, according to Christian beliefs. And at the same time being, trusting God, lock your car, that kind of thing.
Look, I think this is also, interestingly, another place where having a strong sense of intuition becomes a really powerful tool to have in the kit. When you can sense the intention of someone around you, you can decide, am I going to engage or am I going to walk the other way? And that's, the earlier we could find that out, the better off we are for it.
If I had a child, the only thing I would want to know is the rising sign, because at certain risings, before the child can speak, the rising sign is how you appear to other people, whether you want to appear that way or not. So the rising sign is a sign that's on the horizon at the moment you're born. It's the most specious sounding part of an astrology chart. But I'm a Leo rising, so that means I seem more theatrical. I got the hat, I got my wife's art shirt, and I'm comfortable in it. But I look out on the world as an Aquarius. The world sees me as a Leo. If a child is a Capricorn rising in particular, they'll act like everything's cool, and everything sometimes won't be cool. And they'll be given too much responsibility. Watch your sister, that kind of stuff. Or, oh, don't worry about him. He doesn't mind. Look, he's not making a big deal about it. That's the Capricorn rising. They get younger as they get older, but they sometimes get too. So astrology does have a use for that. I once taught it in 5th grade. My nephew was in 5th grade, and the teacher, I must have been high on something, and asked me to come in and teach astrology. And you could have heard a pin drop. There was not one person talking when I was talking about astrology, and they got it. They really got it. And I got letters afterwards. Oh, so thank you for telling me I'm an Aries. One guy one kid wrote and said, thank you for telling me I'm a Sag, but when I got home, I found out I'm a Jehovah's Witness. Poor kid, right? He probably got smacked. But as astrology and all this intuition stuff is necessary even for the warriors who are going to make the world a better place. And when I say warrior, I don't mean necessarily out there with a gun like the people in the Ukraine or Somalia or all these other places. I mean, we are at war trying to make the world a better place for the children and a place where kids can be free. I think that there are places where common ground occur. And I think that's something everybody could agree on. We want people to be themselves and be free to be themselves. You know, it's like the Constitution of the United States in a lot of countries has existed for a long time, but it has been just us. It's just been for the, and what do they call people who use their money and power to rule over others? Plutocrats, plutocracy. That's what we have in this country and a lot of other countries, a plutocracy. What are we having? The Pluto return. It comes from Pluto, the god Pluto in mythology, who decided you go to heaven, you go to hell. He had absolute power over the other world. That is what we're up against. This will teach you to have me on your podcast.
Oh, please. Look, I want to go there all the time. If it's not making me uncomfortable, then I'm not doing my job.
Well, that's good. Like I said, I grew up in Brooklyn during the gang wars. I had a policeman father. If it wasn't for him, I'd probably be getting out of jail about just now. And I was a bodyguard in the movie business for a while, you know, like living every day with Michael J. Fox on the movie, The Secret of My Success, Tom Hanks, you know, people like that, working as a bodyguard. So you have to think that, yes, everybody's a wonderful person, but I once had lunch with Michael and Julian Lennon and his bodyguard, who was a police captain from Cleveland with 3 guns. And I didn't have a gun at the time. And I was thinking to myself, this guy's father got killed by a fan. And that's the kind of balance we need to walk, that balance between intuition and logic.
Yeah, it's these dichotomies that exist side by side are always so interesting. And I love that about you. There's so much richness and texture that
I can't keep a job is basically what it comes down to.
Well, you know, you're fitting in with the rest of the world these days.
Yeah, I was in the gig economy before there was a word for it.
Before there were gigs.
Exactly. I mean, when I was homeless, I worked in recording studios and rehearsal studios and all kinds of, but my life is very interesting. I have to say, I didn't realize it at the time because it was just like survival, but it turns out to be very interesting. Like being with Sid Kaplan and watching him printing Exile on Main Street. That was the name of the album. He was printing it in his little room there, you know. So that's how I learned about photography, was from him. He's still going, Sid Kaplan.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Being 72, you know, you start seeing the end of the conveyor belt, and then you realize you could either just be a selfish asshole, or you can try and do what you can to make things better for the people that come after you. And you can just see it in some world leaders. They're trying to make a legacy, but their legacy is being made on with killing other people. It's just insanity to me.
Well, I think, what I observe is when legacy is made from the place of ego, it goes horribly awry, right? If legacy is not selfless, and that's the reality, is we think that if we can put our name on everything else, then we're going to live in perpetuity. But that fades real fast. The only way to truly live is to pass it on to the next generation. And by doing that, you're actually staying alive. And if you believe that we're all actually one interconnected species and being, then you truly do stay alive.
Well, there's your book. That's great. I love that. Well, you think about who has lasted, because, you know, it's like the poem Ozymandias, where it talks about someone coming upon these stumps of legs in the desert, and it had been some amazing, powerful warrior, and all that's left is the stumps. The things that last are the things that people find useful. You know, like people quote Shakespeare about 50 times a day. I think there's some statistic. So he was useful, you know, your mind's eye, things like that, a lot of expressions. You know, Andy Warhol about everybody's famous for 15 minutes. That lasted. Yogi Berra, there's a lot of sayings. You know, the things that last are the things that people need in their life. They don't need to invade another country, I think, and they don't need to kill people. It's it's so horrible. I mean, it's easy to hurt people. I found this out at a young age, and my father sat me down and said, "Look, you're a big guy. You can't go doing stuff like that. You just can't do it. You have to listen to people. You can't just hit people." And apparently a lot of people haven't learned that. Yeah, and I think it's a magical time to be alive, because Jupiter Neptune is actually can be really wonderful for the arts, for dance, for anything spiritual. It'll make the liars better liars, unfortunately, but I think if everybody understands that there are people that think that it's okay to lie to you because it's for a higher purpose, and then it's like, I can't look at an advertisement without thinking they're trying to sell me something. But apparently there's people that look at the news and advertisements as if it's gospel. I'll never understand that as long as I live.
Well, I think there's a lot of programming that goes on there. And this programming, and look, I've spoken about this before, but our modern marketing world has been built on the work of this guy, Edward Bernays, who was the nephew of Sigmund Freud. And he took all of Freud's work and used it to exploit a weakness in the human psyche condition, to simply put, make people do what you want them to, think what you want them to, buy what you want them to, all while thinking they're doing it of their own volition.
Right.
And so that's the foundation of this modern marketing. Is everybody using it that way? Absolutely not. But this program has been put in place, and many have used it that way for a very long time. And so the programs have been written and they've run for many decades now. And so it's in our collective psyche and consciousness and in our dialogue. And that's controlling a lot of the zeitgeist.
So what does it have to do with establishing a need or establishing a fear and then selling something that addresses that need or fear? Is that what it's about?
Navah shared this quote with me, and I don't know who it's by, but it's, "You'll never have enough of what you don't need."
Interesting.
And I think that just sums it up, right? You could sell someone something they don't need, and all of a sudden they're feeling a sense of lack, right? And especially when you start layering in their sense of worth on it, comparing them socially, because we're social beings, that's where keeping up with the Joneses comes from. You get into this cycle, right, of running after something you don't even want, and you lose sight of not only where you're going, but who you are. And I think that's the real pandemic that we're experiencing psychologically in this world. And that's the one I think we need to break through. And actually, I'm curious to ask you, because I see this at its most reductive sense as a consistent disconnecting from each other and the world at large. And so I believe that what we need is a coming back together. And I sense that the next big chapter in our civilization's life is going to be about everything relational. It's not about the what or the how. It's about the connective tissue between. It's the relationships between these different parts.
Well, yes, and everyone's afraid of everybody else. I see it when you go out and you're not wearing a mask, and someone who is wearing a mask looks at you like you got a gun to their head. So there's a lot of fear that's going to have to be overcome. But I think first we have to reestablish what freedom is. And I feel so badly for all the children that have been dealing with no masks, not seeing people's faces, not seeing their friends smile. I think the lack of smiling and having to, maybe they're really good with eyes. They can tell everything from eyes, but I think babies learn from looking at people's faces, and I know I do, and a lot of people can't even hear right without looking at people's lips.
And science has proved this, right? Mirror neurons are a very important part of the social structure. When we see someone showing some sort of emotion, we're able to have empathy and relationship to them because of it. That's why when someone smiles, we smile back, because it brings it out in us. Or when we see someone hurting, we feel that pain and we're able to help.
And smiles are so powerful that if you're feeling bad and you just smile, there's a chance you'll feel a little bit better, even though you haven't done anything differently except move your facial muscles. And so I think that in what we're talking about, this Jupiter Neptune thing does herald a better time. But I think we're all going to have to live a little bit as if things are a little better than they are, which is important when you do affirmations. My book, Quantum Affirmations, which is the one I talked about with the quantum physics, you visualize the way you want things to be, including the bad parts of it, like winning the lottery and your family members that you never met before come out of the woodwork. That's everything has its positive and its negative. I think people have to be braver than they've ever been. And they also have to be more spiritual than they've ever been, because you are going to have to live a little bit like you love everybody. And at the same time, you're going to be overcoming that distrust that the last 2 years have foisted on everybody. I mean, people are mad at people for not getting vaccinated. I mean, I don't understand how people spend all their time being mad about everything. I think that only spirituality and love can overcome this.
Well, I think, again, that comes back to this divisiveness and this perceived separation. And the more we allow that to be the currency, the more disconnected we experience our lives. And I don't know, I can't think of any one person I've met who wants to live a life of disconnection.
Well, can't you use your skills at marketing to come up with a book or product that was going to change the world and make everybody nice again? I think you could do it. I have faith in you. I know you could do it.
Thanks. Well, hey, you're the book guy, so maybe it's a collaboration. We'll have to talk more about that.
Well, you do the book, I'll help you sell it. I have a lot of connections in the book world. And that's another thing I feel for a lot of people. They're all about, oh, you baby boomers, you don't want to let anybody at the trough. So I'm like, Molon Labe, baby, come and take it. You want to do it, go out there and do it. Excuses are the leaning posts of losers. That's what I'm so excited about. So many younger people are like astrology experts on TikTok and Instagram, and people are doing stuff. Don't blame the baby boomers. Just go out and do it. That's my attitude anyway.
I think blame is one of those other things we've got to overcome. That's this negative way of relating that doesn't serve anybody, and it keeps people in that victim set, and it keeps them disconnected from one another again.
Right. I'm telling you, if we all have to be really nice to each other and try and prop each other up instead of tearing each other down. I know it sounds, airy fairy and unicorn rainbow poop, but it's unfortunately true. If you just spend your time thinking, oh, this person is descended from the person who did a bad thing, oh my God, we'll never get anywhere. That's my opinion anyway. I know Amy and I are having a great time. So you can have a great time even if things are weird in the world. And we've pulled in a lot. I mean, we hardly even noticed the pandemic because that's all we do anyway, is stay home and work. So we worked at home before, we worked at during, and we're going to be working at home after the pandemic. I think a lot of people found that they liked working at home. Your home looks beautiful. Looks like a great place to work.
Thanks. Yeah, it's good. But, the thing that I have certainly missed is more of the social interaction, right? This, idea that we are interdependent and we need to be social. And so that's the thing that I'm very excited about. And also just look at, the times we're living in. I think the act of coming together and standing up together for whatever it is that we believe is more important than ever, and not in a way that's adversarial. That's another thing that's really important, because that's part of the old paradigm that's been continuously playing out. Once you're labeling someone as other and judging and creating a fight, it ceases to be productive, and it's exactly the opposite of what you want. So
100%. I mean, I had enough fighting growing up. I don't need any more. I think people think that they have to prove something, but I think this is a very dangerous time. If everybody just stays with the old ways and the old paradigms and it's all about me, it's not going to work. There is a danger that it won't work. But I think if good people do good things and realize that they have to, this is not the time to say, I'm going to the beach and screw you all. I think right now there's a tremendous amount of work to be done. And a lot of it is, talking people off the ledge. There's a lot of people who are scared right now.
Yeah, so that's the question, right? How do you go about your work and help people to see this, to come out of that almost sleepwalking state?
Well, I think when you, I'm prejudiced in terms of astrology and oracles, but when you see the interconnectedness of things, that you can get useful information about your life from a map of how the stars line, the planets lined up around you when you're born, I think it's kind of magical. You know, Einstein said you can either live like everything's a miracle or nothing's a miracle. I prefer to live like everything's a miracle. I think, and to me, that's the spiritual thing. The spirituality to me is kindness, and realizing that the person that's over there, they might be offending you, but they're not a paper cutout. They're a real person. They came to where they are and to act the way they are for a reason. And you can't just like say, well, screw them. I'm going to, you know, it's like, I guess you got to meet people. You got to meet people halfway, like what you were saying about we have to get out more, meet people, and the social interaction. I guess, you know, I've never been afraid of anybody. That's crazy. I know that sounds crazy, but I never have, except on occasion. Growing up in Brooklyn, I was afraid of people. But since I've been big, I haven't been afraid and learned how to take care of myself. I haven't been afraid of people. And I have to remind myself, people are afraid. They're afraid if they see someone big like me. They're afraid. But now everyone's afraid if they see someone without wearing a mask. That's got to change.
The problem is that, people are being told what to be afraid of. And
Yes.
because these programs are so deeply embedded, a lot of people take these cues without even realizing. They think that they're their own thoughts, feelings, and beliefs, and that just leads to complete chaos and disconnect. And that's kind of the state that we're in. I keep on saying we're in the blender because we're being thrown around. It's hard to make up from down, and it's also hard to make truth from misinformation or disinformation, and these campaigns that are being used all over the place, and everyone's just pointing fingers, blaming everyone else for doing the same thing. You just get so overwhelmed, you kind of throw your hands up. And so I think it's more important than ever that we get our center, we get our foundation, and we become unshakable and unbreakable, because there's a lot out there that could do it.
I love the blender image. And, Gurdjieff said, the philosopher Gurdjieff said, to get well, you got to know you're sick. So you have all these people who are in the blender. They got to know they're in the blender. And it's just like everyone, there are people that say everyone has to admit that they're a racist, and everyone has to admit this. I think the first thing about isn't that the first step of the 12-step program, as we admitted we were powerless to do anything. So I think people have to admit that there's a problem, or else they won't solve it. My friend William David Siegel wrote a book called The Control Factor, and it talks about people have this thing that if only this would happen, then everything would be okay. Mm-hmm. And that it's all this stuff is just to make them feel okay. It's like they're angry because people should wear masks. They're angry that people shouldn't wear masks. If only no one wore a mask, everything would be okay. That's the control factor. Mm-hmm. But you seem more aware than most people about how we've been manipulated. That the marketers.
Well, I think just being in that realm of marketing, and early on in my career, I had a bit of an existential crisis of wait, what am I doing here? I see how people are using. Look, I fell in love with the act of storytelling, of connecting through sharing something we're passionate about, right? And I think that is the power and potential of marketing. At its core, it's storytelling. And when it's authentic and it's heartfelt, it's meaningful and powerful and very productive. It's a great way of organizing and, just having this force multiplier taking place. But when it's used in a manipulative way that's just used to exact a transactional exchange, then it doesn't matter what you do to get there, because your only metric is that bottom line, and that's what's been done. And then on top of it, when it becomes something that's more about deceit and a true manipulation of people's intentions and behaviors, that becomes dangerous. So that crosses the line from being something that's just slimy and wrong into something that's very dangerous, and it really robs us of our very freedom. So It's, it's funny though, because a lot of people who are speaking out in different ways around the way things are being handled by our systems, our governments, any of these people holding power, they immediately get labeled as, again, right, the heretic. But in this case, you're, against your country, you're against democracy, you're against capitalism, whatever it is, that they just flip it and say you're against it. Well, actually, I believe it is the responsibility of the people to be the counterbalance to those in charge. That's how this country was set up. And so without it, it doesn't work. And that's one of the most dangerous things, is so many people have forgotten that and are just stuck in fear.
They are. And I understand why they don't want people to say bad things. But the First Amendment was created so that people could say things that other people didn't want to hear. And that's unfortunately the way things are. But once again, you have people who think if only I could control everybody's speech, everything would be okay. The control factor is a very, very real thing. And when I hear you talk, you really know what's going on. I do hope you do a book. I think, and it also explains why all the companies on your website that you've done marketing for are real companies that do really good things. And the way they're presented by you is not only, really attractive and looking well, but they do good things for the world. So that's kind of nice. See, right livelihood is a powerful thing. I'm hoping that the people are going to realize that they should not be connected to not right livelihood, whether that's the guards of like, Putin and people who are doing bad things to the world, because at a certain point, you got to wonder, where are the heroes? Where are the patriots?
What I would say is I think we're experiencing a crisis of values, and the patriots lose their way when they don't have a clear set of values that they're in service of. And so if we aren't clear, and that's exactly what I do with, brands, I believe it's the same. How we live our life, or how a business is guided through their work, is one and the same, right? It's always ruled by a set of values. It's whether they're conscious or not, and whether they're aligned with the true purpose of the individual or the organization or not. And when they are, great things happen and people notice and they want to be a part of it. When they're not, destructive things happen. Things happen where you're in isolation or you're in fights and conflict. And it's really a matter of, we need to come back to what our values are. And the systems that held that for us in the past, whether it be the religious institutions or our familial structures, those have eroded to a point and have been invaded by, things like social media, where there's such distraction and disconnect even within those systems, that there isn't that same clarity and intention around those values that are being upheld and what their, common purpose is.
That's powerful stuff you're talking about. Well, but people have to feel valued in a structure and organization. And I think that's one of the big problems, is the isolation caused by the lockdowns. People don't feel valued. They don't feel heard. They don't feel connected. And those are all dangerous situations. You don't want to deal with people who feel like that for too long. So that's why I think they cannot do more lockdowns. The lockdowns have been shown to not work, and they've actually been quite destructive, especially to young people.
Yeah, look, I get why they were done initially when we're in this state of complete fear and confusion, which was actual, right? We didn't know a lot. With the amount we know now, I agree with you completely. I think it's completely counterproductive, and we're going to be seeing for decades to come the negative effects we've had from this social isolation. Yes. Another thing I was thinking the other day, even like the idea of like social distancing, like that is a marketing term.
A 16-year-old girl invented that whole thing. And that social distancing is what happens in prisons. You're not allowed to stand too close to people in prisons. So and then you have the people that are saying it's all a conspiracy, and then you have the other people that are saying it's not a conspiracy, we're just doing this for your own health. But all I know is 14 days to flatten the curve was a bunch of bullshit. And that's one of the worst things that's happened, is nobody trusts anybody now.
Yes, that is the worst thing, because again, that just creates all of this disconnection.
Yeah, I think, you asked before, what's going to make it better? I think first, everyone admitting there's a problem, and then applying the wonderful things you were talking about are true. Isolating the problem, analyzing the problem, and coming up with solutions to the problem. Because we have a generation of kids that have worn masks for 2 years. They might not like us. I might be gone by the time they're old enough to start kicking butt, but at a certain point, they might have unexpressed anger is not the greatest thing in the world. It makes people do bad things. And so and plus, when they don't look at people as another person, so I think there is a lot of work to be done, a lot of work to be done. I'm glad that you're going to do it.
And I'm glad you are doing it. And thank you. I look forward to your upcoming book as well. And we'll definitely share that once it's out. But thank you so much, Monty. We could go on for days.
We can. I feel like we did. And the ones that are coming out, we're doing The Art of Affirmations, which is a 3 affirmation deck set. And we're doing that for Red Feather. And we're doing for Barnes and Noble, we're doing the Intuition Oracle. So speaking of intuition, that's pretty awesome. They asked us to do it. They were like, we want another karma card. We have karma cards, but we want another one. So we were like, okay.
I love it. When that comes out, let's do another episode on that, because I think it's really hitting on a nerve point in our collective.
Great. And when you do your book, I'll help you sell it.
Sounds good. Thanks, Monty. Thanks for joining us this week on Growth Guide. A big thanks to our sponsors. This episode is sponsored by the Permaculture Education Institute. You may have listened to the episode I did with founder Morag Gamble. She's incredibly knowledgeable in permaculture practices and communes with nature on the deepest of levels. The conversation we had revealed how returning to a healthy relationship with nature brings us internal peace and harmony. Whether in schools, prisons, on farms, or in our backyards, the result's always the same. Morag devotes her life to restoring our soil and enriching community. Whether you're looking to level up an established career, or into community farming, or being called to this field for your next chapter, the wealth of knowledge and wisdom Morag offers is paramount. This is where the Permaculture Educators program comes in. It's a global online learning community led by Morag Gamble. The program includes dual certificates of permaculture design and permaculture teaching. If you're called to be a part of the positive change growing around the world through living simpler, speaking up, and teaching permaculture, this course is for you. For anyone looking to make permaculture their way of life and their livelihood too. For more information, visit growthguide.love/perma. This episode is sponsored by Morning Man. Live manly, own the morning. I learned about this from UFC champ Frank Shamrock. He was always having trouble getting started in the morning without like 7 or 8 cups of coffee. No exaggeration, I've seen this in person. So he created this product that's packed full of 45 superfoods and it has 95 milligrams of clean caffeine, so you get that charge from the greens and also get a hit from the caffeine without feeling all jacked up. I'm definitely caffeine sensitive and I like this product because it doesn't make me feel like I'm bouncing off the walls, but I feel sharp and energized to get shit done. Visit growthguide.love/morningman to learn more and use promo code GROWTH for 15% off. I'd also like to thank our sponsor, Atmananda Yoga. You guys have got to check out their yoga alignment mat. I've been using this for a long time. As you know by now, I've studied and trained with them as a yoga teacher, and the mat is incredible to deepen your practice and to ensure a lifelong injury-free practice. Visit growthguide.love/alignment for more info or to buy. Be sure to use code GROWTH at checkout for 15% off. Make sure to visit our website, growthguide.love, where you can find freebies, exclusive content, and subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode. If you found value in listening, I'd really appreciate a rating on iTunes. I can't tell you just how important this is. Or spread the love. Tell your friends, your fam, heck, tell your spirit animals. And follow me on Instagram at growthguide.love. Be sure to tune in next week for our newest episode.